The summer of 1987 arrived warm and golden across northern Minnesota, the kind of season that made everything feel slower, softer, almost untouched by time. Willow Creek Lake sat hidden beyond winding gravel roads, a place most people only heard about through word of mouth. It wasn't a tourist hotspot. There were no crowded beaches, no buzzing resorts, just still water, towering pine trees, and a silence that felt almost too complete. When Mark and Linda Harper arrived, the air carried that fresh pine scent, and the lake shimmered under the late afternoon sun like glass. The lake house itself stood slightly elevated on a patch of uneven ground, its wooden frame aged but sturdy. The paint had begun to fade, and the porch creaked with every step, but it had charm, the kind people romanticize in old American cabins. Inside, the decor hadn't changed much since the late 70s. Floral curtains, a brick fireplace, and a narrow staircase that led up to a small bedroom overlooking the lake. Linda immediately fell in love with the place. She said it felt like stepping into a quiet memory, something peaceful and far away from the noise of the city. Mark, on the other hand, noticed things Linda didn't, or maybe chose not to focus on them. The silence around the house wasn't just peaceful, it felt heavy. There were no distant boat motors, no voices echoing across the water, not even the usual hum of insects at dusk. It was as if the area had been muted. Even the wind, when it passed through the trees, made a low, hollow sound that seemed to linger longer than it should. Mark brushed it off, telling himself it was just the unfamiliar environment playing tricks on him. That first night, everything still felt normal, until just after midnight. Mark woke briefly to the sound of wood shifting somewhere in the house. He didn't think much of it. Old cabins settle, especially near water. But then came the sound again, more distinct this time. A soft, deliberate knock. Not loud, not aggressive, just 3 slow taps. He turned toward Linda, expecting her to still be asleep, but her eyes were already open, staring toward the bedroom door. She whispered that she had heard it too, and that it wasn't coming from outside. The following day, Linda tried to act like nothing had happened, spending hours by the lake with her sketchbook, capturing the stillness of the water and the outline of the trees. But something about her had changed. She kept glancing back toward the house, as if expecting to see someone standing in the window. Later that evening, she mentioned hearing faint scratching sounds near the walls while Mark was outside. When he checked, there was nothing there, no animals, no visible damage. But as he stepped back onto the porch, he noticed something that made him pause, faint, damp footprints near the edge of the dock, leading halfway toward the house, before suddenly disappearing. The evening of July 18, 1987, began like any other summer night at Willow Creek Lake, calm and deceptively peaceful. The sky turned shades of orange and purple as the sun sank behind the pine trees, casting long shadows across the wooden dock. Mark stood outside near the grill, flipping burgers while Linda sat at the small patio table, her sketchbook open but untouched. Normally, she would have been drawing the sunset, capturing every detail of the glowing water, but that night she seemed distracted. She kept glancing toward the tree line, her expression tight, as if she was listening for something no one else could hear. They ate dinner under the soft buzz of the porch light, trying to keep the mood light. Mark joked about city life, about how quiet the lake felt compared to Minneapolis traffic. Linda forced a smile, but her hands trembled slightly when she lifted her drink. At one point, she asked Mark if he had locked the side door leading toward the dock. He told her he had checked it twice already. Still, she insisted on walking inside to check again herself. From the porch, Mark watched her move through the living room window, pausing near the hallway as if listening closely to the walls. Around 10:45 p.m., Mark realized they were running low on firewood and remembered Linda had been craving ice cream earlier that day. The small convenience store in town stayed open late during the summer months, so he grabbed his keys and offered to make the quick drive. Linda hesitated when he told her he'd be gone for about 40 minutes. She followed him to the front door, holding her arms close to her chest like she was suddenly cold, even though the air outside was warm. Just before he stepped onto the porch, she said quietly, "Don't take too long. This place feels different after dark." The drive into town was uneventful, the kind of quiet rural road where headlights cut through endless darkness. Mark later told investigators that he didn't feel anything unusual during the trip, no strange cars, no signs of trouble. He bought firewood, picked up a carton of vanilla ice cream, and chatted briefly with the cashier about the weather. But as he drove back toward the lake, he noticed something odd. The closer he got to the cabin road, the darker the surroundings seemed, as if the moonlight itself had dimmed. The trees cast heavy shadows across the gravel path, and for a moment, he thought he saw movement near the edge of the woods, but when he slowed down, there was nothing there. When Mark pulled into the driveway around 11:25 p.m., the first thing he noticed was the front door standing slightly open. The porch light flickered weakly, casting uneven shadows across the wooden boards. A cold feeling settled in his chest as he stepped out of the car, calling Linda's name into the night. There was no response, no footsteps, no sound of movement inside. The lake behind the house looked completely still, reflecting the dim light like black glass. As Mark pushed the door open and stepped into the cabin, he immediately sensed something was wrong. The air felt heavy, the silence unnatural, and somewhere upstairs, he could hear the faint sound of water still running. Within minutes of Mark's frantic call to emergency services, the quiet isolation of Willow Creek Lake was shattered by the distant wail of sirens. Red and blue lights cut through the darkness, flashing against the tall pine trees and reflecting across the still water. Deputies from the county sheriff's office arrived first, stepping cautiously into the lake house with flashlights raised. Mark stood on the porch, pale and shaking, repeating the same words over and over. She was here. She was just here. Officers quickly moved inside, securing the house and calling for backup as they realized the situation was far more serious than a simple missing person case. Inside the upstairs bathroom, investigators found the unsettling scene exactly as Mark had described it. The bathtub was still half full of warm water, faint steam lingering in the air. Linda's folded clothes sat neatly on the sink, undisturbed, along with her wedding ring resting beside them. One officer noticed the writing on the fogged mirror almost immediately. 3 words traced unevenly across the glass. Not alone here. The message sent a chill through everyone in the room. It didn't look like something written casually. The letters appeared hurried, shaky, as if Linda had written them while frightened or under pressure. Search teams worked through the night, combing every inch of the property. Officers scanned the surrounding woods with powerful flashlights, shouting Linda's name into the darkness. Dogs were brought in to track her scent, starting from the bathroom and moving toward the lake. The dogs followed a trail down to the edge of the dock, where they suddenly stopped, pacing in tight circles and whining. Divers were called in before sunrise, plunging into the cold lake water with searchlights cutting through the murky depths. For hours, they searched beneath the surface, feeling along the lakebed for any sign of a body, but they found nothing except tangled weeds and thick layers of mud. As daylight broke over Willow Creek Lake, federal authorities were notified due to the mysterious nature of the disappearance. By the second day, agents from the FBI arrived, bringing advanced equipment and a renewed sense of urgency. They began questioning Mark in detail, asking him to recount every moment leading up to Linda's disappearance. He repeated his story multiple times, about the ice cream run, the flickering porch light, and the eerie silence when he returned. Investigators paid close attention to his behavior, noting every hesitation and change in tone. They searched his vehicle thoroughly, checking the trunk, seats, and tires for any trace evidence, but found nothing linking him to foul play. Meanwhile, investigators began interviewing locals in nearby towns, hoping someone had seen or heard something unusual that night. A few residents mentioned hearing rumors about the lake house long before Mark and Linda ever rented it. Some claimed previous tenants had complained about strange noises, knocking sounds, scratching inside the walls, and objects moving without explanation. One elderly man told officers he refused to fish near that section of the lake because he believed something wasn't right about that place. Despite collecting dozens of statements and running countless forensic tests, every lead seemed to dissolve into uncertainty, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. In the weeks following Linda Harper's disappearance, the lake house at Willow Creek quickly became a place no one wanted to talk about. The property owners, shaken by the investigation and the growing media attention, decided to shut the place down completely. Rental listings were quietly removed, and the once inviting cabin was locked up indefinitely. Yellow police tape remained stretched across the front porch for months, fluttering in the wind like a warning sign to anyone who dared approach. Even after investigators packed up their equipment and the search teams left, the silence around the property felt heavier than before. As time passed, the house began to show signs of neglect. Harsh Minnesota winters battered the wooden exterior year after year, peeling away paint and weakening the structure. Snow piled high against the windows during winter months, and in the summer, vines crept slowly up the sides of the walls, wrapping themselves around porch railings and broken shutters. The once sturdy dock that stretched into Willow Creek Lake began to rot at the edges, its boards warping and splintering under years of exposure to water and weather. From a distance, The lake house started to look less like a vacation getaway and more like a forgotten relic from another time. By the mid-1990s, the abandoned cabin had become the center of local rumors and teenage curiosity. High school kids from nearby towns began treating the property like a dare. Late at night, they would drive down the gravel road with headlights off, parking far enough away to avoid being noticed. Some claimed they sneaked onto the porch and peered through dusty windows, shining flashlights into the dark interior. A few swore they heard faint knocking sounds echoing from inside the walls, even though the building had no electricity and no signs of anyone living there. One group of teenagers later told authorities about an experience that left them visibly shaken. They claimed that while standing near the side of the house, they noticed a faint glow coming from the upstairs bedroom window. At first, they assumed it was moonlight reflecting off broken glass, but the glow flickered, on and off, like the beam of a weak flashlight moving slowly across the room. Terrified, they ran back toward their car without investigating further. The following day, local deputies checked the property and found no evidence of forced entry, no footprints, and no explanation for what the teenagers claimed to have seen. Over time, the surrounding woods seemed to reclaim the property completely. Hunters passing through the area reported an uneasy feeling whenever they got too close to the lake house. Some mentioned that wildlife, especially deer and birds, avoided the back side of the cabin altogether, as if sensing danger hidden beneath the silence. Fishermen who once used Willow Creek Lake regularly began steering their boats away from the abandoned dock, unwilling to linger near a place tied to such an unsettling disappearance. The cabin remained untouched for decades, standing alone at the edge of the water, its dark windows staring out across the lake like silent witnesses to something that had never truly been uncovered. For more than 3 decades, the disappearance of Linda Harper faded into the background of local memory, becoming little more than an old headline tucked away in dusty archives. The lake house stood untouched, slowly decaying under years of harsh weather and isolation. Then, in April 2023, a violent spring storm rolled across northern Minnesota, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, and flashes of lightning that lit up the night sky. The storm lasted for hours, tearing through the dense pine forest surrounding Willow Creek Lake. By morning, the landscape had changed dramatically. Massive trees had been uprooted, branches littered the ground, and several properties near the lake suffered visible damage. When county officials arrived to inspect the area, they immediately noticed that the abandoned lake house had taken a direct hit. A towering pine tree had crashed into the east side of the cabin, splitting part of the outer wall and exposing the interior structure. From a distance, the damage looked severe enough to collapse the building entirely. Authorities cordoned off the area, worried the weakened structure might fall at any moment. As they moved closer to examine the destruction, one officer noticed something unusual within the broken wall, something that didn't match the rest of the cabin's aging materials. Behind the cracked wooden beams and crumbling insulation, there appeared to be a section of wood that looked far newer than everything around it. While the rest of the cabin showed clear signs of rot and age, this section remained oddly solid, its edges smoother and cleaner than expected. Curious, officials cleared away loose debris to get a better look. What they found suggested that someone, many years earlier, had intentionally built a hidden compartment inside the wall. The discovery immediately raised alarms, especially when older officers on the scene recognized the property as the same lake house tied to Linda Harper's unsolved disappearance. Within hours, local authorities contacted state investigators and reopened archived files connected to the 1987 case. News of the discovery spread quickly, drawing attention from federal agencies and forensic specialists. The cabin, once forgotten and avoided, suddenly became the center of intense activity again. Investigators arrived with specialized equipment, carefully stabilizing the damaged wall before beginning a controlled dismantling of the hidden section. Every movement was recorded, photographed, and documented, as officials treated the area like an active crime scene rather than an abandoned structure. As workers removed the final wooden panel, they uncovered a narrow cavity deep within the wall. Inside, resting in the darkness for decades, sat a small sealed metal box, coated in rust but still intact. The box looked deliberately placed, wedged tightly into the hidden space as if someone wanted to make sure it would never be found. Officers exchanged uneasy glances as they carefully lifted it out, placing it onto a clean evidence tarp. When they finally opened the container under controlled conditions, investigators discovered several aged items inside, among them an old cassette tape, a faded photograph with water damage along the edges, and a carefully folded piece of paper marked with a date that immediately sent chills through the room, July 18, 1987. The cassette tape found inside the sealed metal box immediately became the most important piece of evidence investigators had uncovered in decades. It was fragile, its plastic casing scratched and coated with dust from years of being hidden behind the cabin wall. Forensic technicians transported it to a specialized lab, handling it with extreme caution. Magnetic tapes from the 1980s often degrade over time, and even the slightest damage could permanently erase whatever recording remained. Experts carefully cleaned the tape and placed it into a restored player designed specifically for aging evidence, knowing this single recording might hold answers buried since 1987. When the audio was first played, the room fell completely silent. The tape began with several seconds of static, followed by faint background noise that sounded like movement inside a wooden room. Then, slowly, a voice emerged, soft, shaky, and barely above a whisper. Investigators listening through headphones immediately recognized the name spoken in earlier reports. The voice matched recordings from Linda Harper's past interviews and home videos. She sounded terrified, speaking in broken sentences as if she were trying not to make too much noise. Her breathing was uneven, and every word carried the tension of someone who believed danger was only inches away. Linda's voice described hearing sounds coming from inside the cabin walls, sounds she had never heard before their stay at the lake house. She whispered that the knocking wasn't random, and that sometimes it moved from one side of the room to the other, as if someone was crawling through hidden spaces inside the structure. In the background of the recording, faint scraping noises could be heard, slow, dragging sounds that echoed against wood. At one point, Linda's voice dropped even lower as she said something that made investigators replay the tape repeatedly. "There's someone in the walls. I can hear them breathing." The words sounded desperate, like a warning meant for anyone who might later find the recording. Moments later, the tone of the tape shifted dramatically. A loud, sudden noise echoed through the recording, something heavy striking wood. Linda gasped sharply, and her whisper turned into frantic pleading, though her exact words were difficult to make out. Then, cutting through the chaos, another voice appeared. It was unmistakably male, deep and steady, speaking in a calm but chilling tone. Investigators compared the voice to known suspects from the original case, including Mark, but early analysis suggested it did not match anyone previously questioned. The unknown voice spoke only a single sentence, delivered slowly and clearly. "You weren't supposed to hear me." The recording ended abruptly with a sharp crashing sound, followed by several seconds of silence before the tape stopped completely. No footsteps, no further voices, just empty static. Audio specialists enhanced the recording repeatedly, isolating background noises and amplifying faint sounds hidden beneath the static. What they discovered raised even more unsettling questions. Beneath Linda's voice, investigators detected subtle rhythmic sounds resembling breathing that did not match her own pattern. Additionally, faint knocking noises appeared at irregular intervals, similar to the reports Linda had made days before her disappearance. Each time the tape was replayed, investigators noticed new details, suggesting the recording captured far more than just a frightened voice. It preserved the chilling presence of someone who had been hidden within the lake house long before anyone realized it. After the chilling revelations from the cassette tape, investigators turned their attention to the lake house property as a whole, determined to uncover every secret it might be hiding. Ground-penetrating radar surveys revealed unusual disturbances directly beneath the old wooden dock, the very spot where Linda used to sit and sketch the tranquil lake waters. The anomalies suggested the presence of a hidden underground space, a void that had been deliberately concealed decades earlier. With heavy equipment brought in, officials began carefully excavating the area, knowing that every inch could hold evidence critical to solving the decades-old mystery. As layers of mud, rotted wood, and debris were removed, a narrow crawl space slowly came into view. The entrance was cleverly concealed beneath a section of the dock that appeared entirely normal from above, the wood weathered and discolored by years of exposure. Investigators noted that the design suggested intimate knowledge of the property's structure. Someone had meticulously planned this space, reinforcing it and ensuring it remained undiscovered for decades. Inside the crawl space, the smell of damp earth and decay was overwhelming, and small bones and fragments of fabric indicated that the space had not been completely empty for a very long time. Within the confines of the hidden crawl space, tools and old clothing were found, evidence that someone had not only lived there temporarily but had possibly been hiding, observing, or waiting. Rusted cans, a worn blanket, and personal effects suggested a presence that had been deliberately erased from history, leaving no trace in the world above. The forensic team documented every item, noting signs of human activity that could not be explained by natural decay or casual trespassing. The discovery hinted at the horrifying possibility that Linda had encountered this hidden occupant before her disappearance. The excavation also revealed evidence of a struggle or, at the very least, a prolonged period of confinement. Scuff marks lined the walls of the crawl space, and the soil was compacted in ways that suggested repeated movement or attempts to escape. Pieces of broken wood and splintered planks indicated that something, or someone, had been forcibly contained or trapped within the narrow structure. Investigators were left piecing together how such a space could remain undetected for decades, hidden in plain sight beneath a dock that countless visitors had walked across without suspicion. Finally, buried beneath layers of mud and debris, investigators uncovered human remains wrapped in decayed plastic. The fragile bones were carefully exhumed, analyzed, and eventually identified as Linda Harper. Forensic evidence indicated that she had survived for some time after disappearing from the cabin, trapped inside this hidden structure. Even more chilling was the realization that the prints on the sealed metal box found in the cabin walls matched those of the original lake house builder, a man who had long passed away before Linda ever arrived. The disturbing implication was clear. Someone had been watching, planning, and hiding in the walls and beneath the dock, orchestrating events in a way that remained hidden until 2023. As the investigation wrapped up, questions remained unanswered, questions that might never be solved. Who had been living inside the walls and beneath the dock all those years? How had they remained hidden, undetected, while watching the Harpers? And most haunting of all, were they still out there, somewhere, waiting silently in the shadows of another unsuspecting home? The lake house still stands at Willow Creek, weathered, abandoned, and staring across the water as if holding on to its secrets. Visitors pass by quickly, some whispering about strange noises, some claiming to feel eyes watching them from within the trees. Linda Harper's story serves as a chilling reminder that even the most peaceful places can hide horrors beneath the surface, and that some mysteries, no matter how many years pass, never truly leave us. For those who dare to explore, or who believe in the quiet, hidden darkness behind closed doors, remember this. The lake keeps its secrets well, but it never forgets.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.